Hello, everyone. This is a green flag. Still don't work. Joe told me to try it. It still don't work. Thanks for joining us here. We are at the finale of the West Coast Swing as the race in Phoenix has just concluded about a couple hours ago. Well, we had a new package to try out. Not much different, unfortunately, and we'll dive right into that here in just a second. My name is Ryan Peters. I'm joined with Joe Spillman and Steve Risley, who I'm sure are just champing at the bit to get to how they feel about this race. But, we'll dive right in. The first thing we're going to do before we get started is get to let me get right to it here. There we go. These are the standings. Willie B goes back to back. And for some ungodly known reason, keeps wearing a god-awful hat that's about this big. So whatever, I don't know what's going on with that. I don't approve. A couple guys back their way into top fives, Ryan Blaney and Tyler Reddick, along with Kyle Busch backing his way into a top 10. But the guy that was, two guys, I guess, that were really, let's just put it this way, screwed on that last caution flag were Kyle Larson and Kevin Harvick. Much better days than what they ended up finishing. A lot of people, I think, obviously, unless unforeseen circumstances, an act of God happened, Kevin Harvick really had one taken away from him. Chase Briscoe fought his way back all day long to find his way into a top 10. That car actually was running pretty good towards the end. And then somehow, some way, two guys not in the top 10 the entire evening. Hendrick gets all four cars in the top 10. I had no idea Josh Berry was even close to getting into the top 10, but congratulations to that young man getting his first top 10 in the Cup Series. So that is your final results. And I will start the show off as we typically do, leading it with Joe Spillman. Joe, was today's race a good race?
Ryan, look, man, I'm one of the biggest NASCAR fans out there. And it pains me to have to sit on YouTube here and talk shit about NASCAR. But they have got to figure something out when it comes to racing excitement and the ability to put on a production of a race for 3.5 hours. Because once again, I thought the coverage was terrible. When you and I, Ryan, we call games, basketball games on local radio here. And sometimes we have to call basketball games that aren't real exciting.
Can I preface this, Joe?
Go ahead.
You and we have called games literally with each other since August. This is one of the first weeks we have not been together in person, and both of us simultaneously got sick at the same time.
That's crazy, by the way. That's crazy, by the way.
If like we do sound different, it is
like every other night with this guy. Neither one of us gets sick. A week off, we both get sick. But you and I have both called basketball games on the radio in other sporting events that just aren't that exciting. And you have to find a way to put some excitement into that for your listeners or your viewers when it comes to NASCAR. The race today wasn't a great race, and it was compounded by a terrible broadcast. You even texted me about the broadcast during the race. One of the worst things you could do when broadcasting sports is to cut somebody off or talk over somebody. And Danica Patrick, now let me tell you this. I feel like she has one of the most annoying voices in the world, in my opinion. Just hands down, I can't stand to listen to her talk. I know other people don't feel that way, but if she is going to talk, Clint Boyer needs to shut the hell up and let her say what she's trying to say without cutting her off every other word. But the broadcast aside, it wasn't a great race. It wasn't a great race last year.
Hey, Ron, what'd you have for dinner tonight?
Seriously, Steve? But at the end of the day, it wasn't a great race. The broadcast was bad. And again, in back-to-back weeks, and I'm sure we're going to get to this, but in back-to-back weeks, I feel like the person that earned the win, and I'm not even talking about Kyle Larson. I'm a Kyle Larson fan. I feel like the person that earned the win in that race and set themselves up with 9 laps to go and a 4.5-second lead was stripped of the win that he probably would have had, setting aside any mechanical factors with his car, which he didn't have, because of a spin and a quick caution. And NASCAR really tipped their hand today, Ryan. I really feel this way. They tipped their hand because as soon as Burton's car went around, I think it was Burton, as soon as his car went around, caution, just like that, right now, before they even knew any debris was coming off that car. It was like NASCAR was sitting back, chomping at the bit and say, any sign of trouble, get these cars back together, because we just had 3 hours long of three people winning this race, and we got to put some excitement into it. And at the end of the day, Kevin Harvick set himself up for the win. He should have got his 10th win in his final year at Phoenix today. And again, a late caution that I believe was kind of, I don't want to say the word scripted, because I don't think Burton spun on purpose, but still, his car never quit moving forward. It might have got sideways, but it didn't slow down the race at all. There was no reason for a caution there. I call foul on NASCAR part for the second week in a row. Ryan, back. I was about to say back to you. Go ahead.
Back to you at Channel 3. Now going out to LA, we got Steve Risley on site. Steve, did you think tonight was a good race?
I echo everything that Joe said with some additives. I think right now, NASCAR is shooting themselves in the foot here, frankly. I mean, I'll tell you what, today on sports, there was the TPC Players Championship in golf, a major event with the Island Green, world famous hole that everybody likes to watch him dump it in the water from 120 yards. There was the Big Ten Championship game with Purdue and Penn State. There was the selection show. And then coming on tonight for the liberals we have in our audience, there was the Oscars were getting fired up with red carpet rides and whatnots and everything like that. There was a lot of smorgasbord on television today. And for NASCAR to ask somebody to invest 3.5 hours into watching a race, and then to have it completely discombobulated, what's almost become routinely now, in the last 20 to 10 laps of almost every race now. Last week, we saw Kyle Larson lose it to Byron because of a caution. This week, we saw Harvick get screwed. We saw Larson get screwed. It's like my attitude now is as I start to play golf, I got myself a new set of clubs. You know what? Screw NASCAR. I'm going to just go and play golf on Sunday afternoons and come home and flip to the last 20 laps of a NASCAR race and get the flavor of the race. They're hurting themselves by doing this. It's to the point now to where Boyer is on TV along with Danica going, well, don't worry, there's going to be a caution with 10 laps to go. I'm thinking, okay, this race has been boring as hell for the first 257 laps. Why the hell would I think there's going to be a caution in the last 10 laps? Well, because NASCAR is going to throw one because they don't want Richard Petty winning a race by 7 laps again, as Joe said in our conversation, or a 6-second win. They're manufacturing too much stuff. I get the sense in NASCAR.
To caveat what Steve said, that was a conversation we had off air over the telephone.
Yeah.
You're wondering where that came from.
Go ahead, I'm like, did you see the same thing I saw? And it's like, this is getting far too routine, these unexplainable cautions. I mean, it's one thing if a car smacks into another car, T-bones him, or puts one upside down, or you have the big one at Talladega or Daytona, but good God, for a guy to blow a tire and not even spin his car, and a piece of carbon fiber debris slides off the car, it's like, I know that NASCAR has the ability to do I think a 36 car broadcast to all drivers. They've got to have that ability to where they can override and say, based on the channels you're all listening to, there is a piece of carbon fiber on the front straightaway, low in the lower groove. Avoid it for the last 2 laps or last 10 laps. Avoid it. This is just getting silly. It's to the point to where I'm questioning whether I need to invest 3 hours on a Sunday on a beautiful day here in LA where it was in the 70s and just gorgeous, sitting inside watching a damn NASCAR race, that it's going to be totally jerked around in the last 10 laps of the race. Holy crud. I'm done. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I guess I'll be.
And I haven't even gotten into what was the other thing I
Well,
wanted
let's
to
get
talk
into it in a
about?
second, Steve. Let's get Ryan on.
Wait. I got to preview it. Oh, well, go ahead. I can't think of it now. I'll blurt it out and interrupt somebody when I think of it.
I guess, again, I'll be the dissenting voice on this. I think NASCAR did the exact same thing it did last week and was consistent when they saw a car spin out. This car actually had more damage than the car last week. As you said, there was carbon fiber on the track. And then if Kevin Harvick was to run over that carbon fiber and blow a tire and lose this race, you guys would be on here telling us why NASCAR didn't throw a caution, how it's ridiculous,
Ryan,
end up blowing.
No,
I let you
let
talk,
me say
Steve.
one thing.
No. I let you talk for 5 straight minutes. I let you talk for 5 straight minutes. It was at least close to it.
Out of the groove. It was not in a racing groove.
There is no racing groove at Phoenix, as you can tell when they go 6 wide down the front straight, and that's exactly where they fell.
Without the arrow, there was one groove on that damn track today. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all right, Steve. You got your own show elsewhere, and that's what you guys do there. But whenever we're going to talk about this now,
that's a low blow.
I'm the dissenting voice on this right now. If this was, again, Kevin Harvick or somebody else trying to fight for the lead, end up hitting this and end up blowing their tire or whatever it may be, we'd have the same people on here saying that this is ridiculous. NASCAR saw a piece of debris on the track. They didn't throw the caution flag out. It caused another guy that should have won the race. I just think NASCAR was consistent again. And again, this wreck happened right in front of the tower. I mean, it was on the front stretch. So it's just bad luck. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to pit road again. And Kevin Harvick chose 4 tires when everybody else chose 2. If Kevin Harvick chose 2 tires, based on what we saw on 2 restarts, because he had 2 chances to win this race, unlike what Kyle Larson had last week. He only had 1. He ended up losing this race. So it's just a bad break. And at the end of the day, I don't fault NASCAR for it. Again, and I'm the person that has went on and said NASCAR is inconsistent all the time. I don't know where they come up with things. But this year, at least in 2 separate situations, when they've had the opportunity to be consistent, they've been consistent. And it sucks. I agree. I think Kevin Harvick should have won. I don't even like Kevin Harvick and was upset Kevin Harvick didn't win that race. It's his final year. They showed it kind of, was foreshadowing this, if you could put it that way, unless you do believe, like Joe, there's a script that, he was going to be one of the 6 drivers that had 10 wins at a certain racetrack. And that's history. I mean, he literally had 1 chance of history and lost that ability to have that history. So, it does feel bad for Kevin Harvick, but I will say this, it's good to see him run fast, and Kevin Harvick's run fast all year long. So I don't think that this is kind of like the last couple of years where this is his only shot. 2 years ago, Joe, I know you remember this, and obviously Steve as well. Remember the race at Bristol where Chase Elliott held him up? It just felt like that was his only chance to win. I don't think we have that situation this year. But again, I mean, you guys are obviously willing to have your own separate opinions. I think that at the end of the day, if that thing went all the way green, the only thing that we'd have to sit here and talk about is how terrible of a race it was. And maybe we just put 15 minutes into that.
Well, and first of all, right, I said it felt like it was scripted. I don't think NASCAR is scripted. I think that would be way too difficult to say, hey,
scripting.
Hey, you control a spin out at 180 miles an hour. Don't touch the wall. Just chop up your tire a little bit. And we're going to throw a caution. Yeah, I don't think NASCAR is scripted. I think that out of any sport, NASCAR would be one of the hardest to script at the end of the day. But I will say that not just the finish, the entirety of the race, though, we have to look at, because I think that kind of is the prefix on the mood that you get. So we spent 3.5 hours watching a race that the first 2 stages, I think there was 1 caution in the second stage, and it was
Eric Almirola.
A minor caution at that. Where he kind of bounced off and maybe broke the front end of his car a little bit.
No,
So
his wheel exploded.
Yeah,
Literally,
that's
the
right,
rim
that's
of
right.
his wheel
Yeah.
exploded, and he
His-
still got
his-
penalized for it.
Yeah, his rim came apart, and tire went rolling down the track. You're right. So one legitimate caution in 2 stages of racing. Third stage appeared to be the same way down to the last 10 laps. And no matter the outcome after the last 10 laps, you go to NASCAR overtime, which, by the way, every race this season has come down to NASCAR overtime except the Kyle Busch win. So 3 of the 4 races have come down to NASCAR overtime. And I know that's great probably for the viewership of NASCAR, and that's probably what they want. I get it. It makes it exciting. However, they are going to have to figure out a way to make the entire race exciting. And right now, as far as I'm concerned, the only races that are on the schedule anymore that are worth watching all the way through are super speedway style races, because literally anything can happen on any lap, and it most often does. Next week we get a break from the monotony almost that we've seen the last couple of weeks, and we go to Atlanta, Daytona, Talladega. Those races create excitement every week, and if NASCAR wants to continue to draw in viewership, you're going to have to find a way to make the races more exciting. Once again this week, we saw the car out front in clean air, except for when Kevin Harvick was able to track down Kyle Larson. After Kyle Larson had built up a 1.5-second lead and was able to pass him in the dog leg, which was an incredible, Kevin Harvick did an incredible job tracking down Larson and passing him to take the lead. That was the only excitement up until the last 10 laps of the race. And you have to find a way to make these cars, and more specifically, the car that's out in the lead. Today, it pretty much, that was a death sentence to everybody else, unless it was a restart. If you didn't get the lead on a restart and you got out in that clean air, your only hope was for that car that was in the lead, which was Kyle Larson most of the day, and then William Byron at the start of the race for the first stage. Your only hope to track that car down was for him to get out of clean air into traffic and slow his car down a little bit. Something has got to be done with the car's ability to widen the lead in clean air, because that dulls the excitement of the race. And I don't know if you put more emphasis on stage wins at the end of the day. I know you already get playoff points for them, but if you're going to race stage racing, I don't know if you put more emphasis on the end of the stages to make those more exciting. Excuse me, because right now, that's exactly what we're seeing, is the entire field lolling around until the last 10 laps of the race, and it's creating boring racing. As much as the stage racing was supposed to give excitement, as much as this new car was supposed to give us excitement, we have a boring race except the last 10 laps. And like Steve said, why not just turn it on for the last 20 laps of the race now? Because that's really when you're going to find out who's going to win, and that's when all the excitement's going to be.
Well, my question is, and maybe Steve, you want to go in a different direction. Do you have something you want to lead off with before I ask you a question?
I got a whole napkin full of shit I was writing down so I don't interrupt anybody.
I'd appreciate that.
I'll start with the bottom. I mean, if we're going to do this, why don't we just did 40 laps to go in the race, 30 laps to go in the race, throw a competition caution, tell everybody go in, get new tires, everybody go fill your tank up, and then we'll get out and we can eliminate the competition or the green-white checker, unless some idiot really has a wreck. Instead of
the same exact thing could happen regardless.
Yeah, exactly, but less likely, because what happened with the 21 cars, as you said, he just blew a tire. He didn't hit anything. Nobody hit him. He didn't rub in his racing. He just blew a tire because he'd been out there because they were on a long green flag run. And that's why his tire blew. He didn't have any damage to the car until the tire blew, as Joe said. He just came out of the turn, spun his car because of the aero package, of which I'll get into the aero package, which was a total failure. But let's just throw a competition caution with 30 laps, 40 laps to go. Everybody top off. Everybody put 4 tires on. Now we'll go racing. It's about the same thing, because all they did was people came in and put tires on and put gas in with 10 laps to go. And it's turning out that almost every race, it's getting to be like that. Okay, the aero package. I had that number one on my list. Total bomb, but I'll leave that for another discussion. It didn't work. Although there was good out of the aero package when we decided to discuss the aero package. I would have felt better today because I forsake the golf, which I'm an avid golfer. You know, I love golf, and I played the course today that the tournament was played on multiple times. I love thinking about all the holes and how I played them and how I hit the ball in the water where these guys hit the greens, all that. But I just kind of flipped to the golf during NASCAR commercials and tried to watch the race in its entirety. Then I get to the end and I'm thinking, and in the end, Ryan, I'm really excited for Kevin Harvick. I think this is great. This is his 10th win at this track. This is probably his best shot to win a race this year. You're right. He may win another one. His car did seem faster, but it was set up for long runs.
Yes.
They talked about that, and they said his crew chief and him said they don't care how they qualify. They're going to build the car to set up for long runs. We were in a long run. He marched his way to the front, doing exactly what his engineering team and his crew chief and he and Kevin was able to get done. And I was very excited for Kevin. So much that I didn't pick him, and I know you guys did. I didn't care about our points. I just thought this is a great way for Kevin Harvick to win a race at a track that he's dominated, what could be his last win of his Cup career. You know, and then instead, what do? We throw a damn caution for a guy who blew a tire with 10 laps to go and screw him royally. Now, accidents happen. I get it. But I think NASCAR needs to think about being a little more judicious about just tossing a caution. You know, these are supposed to be the safest cars in the world. And by God, we're only going 130 miles an hour. That's pretty damn fast. But by the standards of these cars and the safety built in them, unless somebody gets T-boned direct in the sidebone at that speed, most likely they're going to walk away from it unscathed. Just don't go snowboarding. So I would have felt better if Kevin Harvick had won that race by 6 seconds. I'd have walked away from that race happy. Thrilled. Good for Kevin. Great race for him. Great race for his team. I like Tony Stewart. Great race for Stewart-Haas Racing. Great race for Ford. We're bringing them back in the fold. The multitude of things, the good things that could have happened by Kevin winning that race today. And instead, we chuck a caution for a guy who doesn't spin, doesn't scrape his car up at all until his tire blows. And then it's just a piece of debris falls off the car. He still didn't, and he continued driving. He came into the pits and put 4 new tires on like everybody else did then and went back out and ran. So, and let me see here. There was 3. That was 3 of them. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah, that's it. I'll leave the aero package. All right, Ryan, I'm sure you'll want to touch on that later on, so I'll let that go. That's my thing.
I want to hit on one of your points, and I think that's a valuable option, is for NASCAR to be more lenient when it comes to throwing the cautions. I think that's an option that can happen that, you know, and I can't even pretend to be what that's like. I have no idea. I don't want to, I can't even let the listener know or viewer know what it's like when it comes to hitting the button. I just know that, you know, the 2 times they've had the opportunity to be consistent, they have been. If you're asking for them to say, hey, let's let this play out a little bit more, I think that's fair criticism. And I don't think there's a lot of people that at least have watched the last 2 races that are Larson fans and Harvick fans would disagree with you on either one of those points. So, I mean, I would agree with you on that. I think that if we got to the point where, hey, if you're just going to throw a caution every time a guy gets, 45 degrees sideways through a turn, then there's just going to be some races that we're waiting on at 9:30 at night to get done because, we've had the opposite. You're right. And those are typically truck and Xfinity races, which they cut down by 200 miles because that's usually what ends up happening in those races. But one thing I want to talk about, and, you said it was a failure on the short track package. I don't know if I want to go to that point yet, because I don't think Phoenix is a good racetrack when it comes to competition. I think every time that we've seen Phoenix, it has not been a good race. It literally comes down to a pit stop when in terms of being a good race. So I don't know if Phoenix is the right example for that. I think I'm probably more lenient to go with Martinsville. And then on top of that, Steve, what if Hendrick is just that much better than everybody else right now? Because coming off the trailer 2 weeks in a row, Hendrick in the first segment within the first 20 laps was 4 seconds faster than anybody else with Byron and Larson. Does that play into it? Because everybody else was kind of, fighting for position. We saw comers and goers and things of that nature, except for the first 2 cars, the same players that were last week when it comes to Byron and Larson. So I don't know if I'm ready to write off the package yet, but if this was the test and not a quiz, it failed the test because it was not an exciting race.
Yeah.
And if we could base it off of that one time, I think you're right. It did not set up for great racing. I think Denny Hamlin said that there was an opportunity. He said it feels much different, but I don't want to tell you tomorrow is going to be a great race. And I think he caveated that because I think he knows where we're at when it comes to Phoenix. Okay. I'm more willing to see when it comes to the road races, when it comes to the short tracks. And then maybe Hendrick just has better louvers than everybody else, which I had to research because I had no idea what those were. So maybe that helps with their aero package.
Yeah. Lee Bing, who's listening in, says we got a sports entertainment caution 2 weeks in a row now. And then when you were talking,
that's pretty
about
good.
the louvers,
I like that.
Yeah, like that. He said when you were talking about the louvers, he said, or just now when you were talking about Hendrick's dominance, he said it's the louvers. So, which I don't disagree. Apparently, it's not though, because those got confiscated. Still, all 4
still
cars.
Still dominant. Okay, if I could address a couple of your counterpoints. First off, in rebuttal to Joe's and my argument, taking your side, looking at things from 360, which I tend to do. The 2 words are throwing the caution with 10 laps to go. What has to be there is safety first. It has to be. They are going 140 miles an hour, and they are human beings, and bad things can happen at that speed no matter what. So as much as I hate it and I think they're knee-jerk reactions, I still think if we're going to make mistakes and error, we err on the side of safety first. It's got to be that way. So in rebuttal to mine and Joe's argument of throwing the caution so wantonly, in terms of the aero package, I say this: if your argument holds water, then again, NASCAR's screwing up because this is one of NASCAR's aero package tracks. They decided what tracks were going to be aero package tracks, right? There wasn't a fan vote and said, we want to try and improve racing in Phoenix. Let's throw the aero package there. That was NASCAR's engineers saying, no, Phoenix fits that bill. Okay. Now, in my off-air conversation with Joe, the one point I brought up and we discussed, and we aren't excluding you. We just thought you were eating meatloaf with your family.
I've been sick. It's dinner. All right. I didn't conversate with a lot of people this week.
Well, you guys talk a lot without me anyway, so that doesn't matter. The aero package, I think it did this. What it showed for NASCAR, and Joe and I discussed this briefly, and I want your input on this. What it showed was there is disparity in the drivers. Okay? Because look who all migrated to the front. Harvick hasn't been a factor. Yeah. Take the aero package away, Harvick's a great driver. Guess who gets up front? Kyle Petty rants and raves all week long that
Ryan
Blaney can't drive. Look who finishes in the top 3. Take the aero package away, put the driving back in the hands of the driver, not the engineers. Now you've got disparity. Does NASCAR want that much disparity? Do they want Cody Ware to never have a chance to get up in the top half of the field? I know you do, but does NASCAR want that?
Yes, NASCAR does want that.
They now have shown to me in the first race that, okay, what NASCAR just proved to me on a track like Phoenix, which you call an aero track NASCAR, you're saying, gee, we may have some drivers that are actually better than others, and it's just like Formula One now. Or is it? Do we have the same guys winning all the time now because we've taken the aero package away? You know, is that aiding and abetting the Hendricks boys who have more money than God and spend more money than God? And now all of a sudden we got 4 Hendricks, including Josh Berry, who looked like he couldn't drive a car last week, take the aero package away. This guy's in the top 10 out of nowhere. So there's an argument.
I think that was just a good pit call.
Yeah, I agree. Joe, you and I talked about this. Your input on this.
Well, I think aero is one thing, but I think really when you're on the verge of a kind of, you know, I don't really like to look at Phoenix as a short track. I know that's what it's classified as, but it's really not with the length of the track. Real quick, a comment. Hunter Nixon Fishing says, as a Harvick fan, he's sick to his stomach. Hunter, I'm not a Kevin Harvick fan, never have been, and I'm sick to my stomach for the guy.
I'm with you.
I feel for
Yeah,
you.
yeah. So
We're all in your camp.
yeah. So, but at the end of the day, I think the aero is not what needed to be addressed on this car. I'll go back to the fact of the lead car being so good in clean air. I think that something has to figure out to tone that down just a little bit. If you're leading a race, should you have an advantage? Yes, I think you should, but your advantage shouldn't climb by 6 seconds just because you're able to stay out in clean air that entire time. And what we're seeing is such a disparity with these cars once you're able to get out front that it really becomes impossible to pass. I know we were able to watch Kevin Harvick do that. But why was Kevin Harvick able to do that, though? Because there was only 2 cars up there. And he was actually running in clean air just a little bit himself, so he was able to close the gap. Now, as far what are you waving there?
I got a soft caution coming. I'm going to let you finish, but I got a soft caution for
No,
your thought process.
Yeah. So, you know, at the end of the day, I really don't know how much an aero package is going to improve the race competition when it comes to short tracks, when it comes to road courses. And you're right. I agree with you, Ryan, by saying I don't want to judge this based off Phoenix, because I think Phoenix is really too big of a track to really give that any credence. Let's wait until they get to Richmond. Let's wait until they get to Martinsville and see what happens. Let's race until a road course and see if that gets a little bit better. But I am at the point right now where I think that the only races from here on out, at least with this car, that we're going to see exciting racing is super speedway style tracks like Atlanta, like Daytona. I'm repeating myself. And I think really once NASCAR figures out it's the cars and not the tracks, that at the end of the day, I think there'll be more push to see more tracks like Atlanta. Go ahead with your caution.
Wait, before you throw the caution, one thing, then I'll be done of the day. Won't care anymore. Get my point out.
Golfing. Golfing.
I'm going to watch the golf on TV. I'm going to turn it on. Okay, I'm going to make one statement in one word. Not one word. I'm going to make one statement that I'm going to give you one word. Statement is, it just seems to me right now that NASCAR doesn't know what it wants. Do we want parity? Do we want great drivers moving to the front? Do we want to bunch everybody up? They don't seem to know what they want. All right, now, the solution to this in my book is one word. Practice. You want to learn about this aero package on Phoenix? Let them practice. Put the cars on the practice. Let them run on practice situations and say, you know, this aero package not really going to work on this track. Instead, we try and find that out in the course of a race when the masses are watching. The masses don't go to Fox Sports like us 3 idiots do and tape or watch practice. Okay? But the drivers, the engineers, NASCAR, everybody, if they let them practice more with these changes, put them all cars on the track. I mean, Blaney said He wasn't one of the cars that tested the new aero package at Phoenix. They went into it blind. You know, maybe if they'd had practice, NASCAR would have known what Hendrick's louvers were going to do
That's why they found it, because they had practice.
for 20 minutes.
No, they
Talk
had
about
50-minute
practice.
practice this week.
15-minute?
50.
50. Ooh, great. I remember days when you guys were in diapers. They used to go out and practice Thursday, Friday, Saturday
Yeah. you're right.
for 2-hour sessions a day.
Find the doggo says, Steve, that was at least 17 words. And
Okay.
and Lee Ving said, we're talking about practice, not a game, not a game they go out there and die for. Practice.
Not a race. Practice.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. At Indiana University, back in the 70s and 80s, we called games a vacation. When we had a game, we had a day off because practices were a bitch.
Yeah, because Bob Knight.
That's right. Whatever.
Yeah.
And that's
Let's
why
get back to the race.
that's why I have a ring, and most of you clowns don't have one.
I have a ring.
Yeah.
She tells me what to do all the time.
I don't have one because I'm 5'3" and can't reach the top cereal aisle. But
All right, go ahead.
no, I think kind of what you said, NASCAR doesn't know what it wants. I think fans don't know what they want. I think NASCAR's shown consistency by trying to change the fact that they want this in the driver's hands. You know, last year they thought that the aero package, when it came to the car, was doing not enough to put it in the driver's hands. So they made a change, put it in the driver's hands. And now we're upset that it's boring because two really good drivers are running away with the race. So I think that that's what they end up doing, is putting it in the driver's hands. And at some tracks, at some places, we find out that there's just really good drivers at this track. Kyle Larson has finished in the top 5 at this track, I think 5 out of the last 6 times. Kevin Harvick, like you said, Joe, I think, again, I don't think it had anything to do with aero. I think Kevin Harvick's just really good here, and he found a way that if you have a fast car, you tune it that well, you don't have to fight the clean air. So, and the reason why I gave you the soft caution, if you're used to Formula One, this was a caution in turn 2, not a full track caution, a soft caution. This is the exact same type of thought process NASCAR had when it went to the 550 package, when everything was full throttle out. And it was, let's make everybody run the exact same thing. We won't have any off break time. And we'll just see what happens when cars dice into, all the way around the track. And it led to horrible racing because nobody could get around anybody because everybody was going the same speed. If you did not qualify well while you were out there by yourself, forget about it. You were going to run that same type of spot the entire race. And I think that's exactly why NASCAR went to the 550 horsepower package, because they thought the same thing, Joe, like you're saying, is, well, if we can never combat clean air versus dirty air, let's just all make them run the same when it comes to speed. And there was just full throttle all the way around. And I think that's why we had such terrible results at the end of the Gen 6 car. If you want to hear me rant upon that, that's on another show that we have had previously. But, I think at the end of the day, it just really depends on what driver we have. And we've also said that the mile and a halfs were good races last year. So I don't want to just now, because we had one bad mile and a half race in Las Vegas because it was 40 degrees. I just think we're at the beginning of the season, and, I know we are doing a show and we want people to listen. I do want to say this. We've had great, people chiming in and commenting and being a part of the conversation with us. Thank you very much. We do appreciate that. And we're glad that you're here. But it's still early in the season. The only thing that I know for certain right now is Hendrick's really good and Chevy's on top of their game. And I was planning on literally doing this show with you guys going, if Kevin Harvick wins today, what does he need to do for the rest of the season to get back to this track? Because if Kevin Harvick gets to the Final Four, I'm picking Kevin Harvick based upon what he's done at this track. And I was ready to have that conversation. And it's unfortunate that didn't happen, because I don't care. Think of another track that fits in a driver's hands more than Phoenix does to Kevin Harvick. And I think when you look at it that way, if Kevin Harvick could have handpicked a track on his final year to say, hey, you're going to race for a national, or you're going to race for a championship, where are we going? Phoenix. And he had a chance at Phoenix to punch his ticket, and things didn't go his way. And at the same time, the last place you want to be on a late caution's in first place, because everybody's doing what you're not doing.
Yeah. And so we have a comment from Hunter Nixon again that says he wants to see the best drivers competing against others, against each other. He doesn't want to see C-tier drivers competing against A-tier drivers like Larson, Busch, Harvick, etc. And really that kind of drives home. And Ryan, I really don't dispute what you're saying. I'm just going to, kind of jump off. I made a comment last week during the post-race show when I was upset about, the wreck and Larson kind of getting the win taken away from him. I'll say the same thing. William Byron, and you kind of put words in my mouth last week, if you remember, because you said I called him a second-rate driver.
I may have paraphrased a little bit. Yes.
Yeah.
I was practicing today's journalistic standards.
Right. So I don't feel that William Byron is a second-rate driver. As a matter of fact, I said I don't want to call him a second-rate driver because he's not. But he's not one of the sports superstars. Show me the William Byron fan club. He doesn't have one. I'm sorry, he doesn't. And at the end of the day, when you see a William Byron, when you see another one of these drivers who are good drivers, Alex Bowman, win races, I'll even say a Tyler Reddick. Yeah, when that happens every once in a while, okay, good job. They really fought for a win. But 2 weeks in a row, we've seen William Byron win a race. And I would say that the vast majority, and I'm sure William Byron does have fans like his mom and his dad and brothers and sisters. So I'm sure he does have a couple fans, but at the end of the
huge
day,
outreach.
Yeah. The majority of NASCAR fans, the vast majority of NASCAR fans are not happy with this outcome simply because William Byron doesn't even enter their mind when they're thinking about watching the race or who's going to be competitive. And at the end of the day, like it or not, that's not good for viewership. It's just not. It turns people off because they want to see their driver, what somebody would call an A-tier driver, competing for a race and winning. So, I know that that's not true. William Byron, Alex Bowman, both great drivers, or they wouldn't be where they're at. But at the end of the day, nobody cares if they win.
Yeah,
but
Ryan,
he's also. Go ahead,
Ryan. I just had a question for you. You may not remember this, so it may make it a mute point. In your presentation, the last one you gave, you mentioned the fact that there were two drivers running away with the race and whether people wanted to see that. What two drivers were you referring to?
the beginning of this race was Larson.
No, you said there were
Byron.
two drivers that were destined to win the race. One of the two drivers. Who were you talking about?
If you're talking at the beginning of this race,
No.
I said
Okay,
Larson
well,
and Byron.
He meant the beginning of the race, Steve, when Byron and Larson, obviously nobody had a better car than them. And Kevin Harvick didn't have a better car with them until he got 40 laps underneath his tires. So,
right. But
know,
the point I was going to make was talking about two drivers. I assumed you were talking about Byron and Larson because they pretty well dominated pretty much most of the race until about the last 30 or 40 laps.
Just like last week, yes.
Yeah, but then nature took its course, nature being just auto racing in its own right. And Harvick was running away with that race until the damn caution came.
Yeah,
he was running away with it.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't like Larson was gaining laps or times per lap on him. Harvick was gaining time each lap.
Yeah, that's not in dispute.
Yeah. Okay. Well, he just said there were two drivers that were running away with the race. I
talking
want to
about
make sure he had the right two drivers.
Yeah, I was just
That's all.
meaning at the beginning of this race, the
Okay,
two drivers
all right.
that came off the hauler were again the same
Right.
two drivers that came off the hauler last week.
They said up front that Harvick had been under the guys they were going to build a long run car, that they had no intention of being competitive at the beginning of a run, that they knew it was going to take time for the car to dial in. They got what they wanted. They got a long green flag run to end the race. And once again, NASCAR managed to find a way to screw that up.
Right. And
I haven't even used any foul language yet.
Yeah, but
I'm pissed off.
And that should tell you really everything you need to know, though,
Right.
about Phoenix. Kevin Harvick knew that this was going to be a boring race. He knew that there weren't going to be many cautions, and he knew that he was going to need a car that could go 50,
Right.
60 laps without having to pit before he needs fuel. And that's exactly what he had. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, Ryan, here's a topic to put down for later on discussion.
We're running out of time, Steve.
Is Phoenix a good track to end the season on?
Absolutely not. I
Okay.
think that
We'll ta-
going
yeah.
away, yeah, we'll talk about a different time. But to
Different
answer
time,
you
yeah.
shortly, to go away from Homestead, a much better track was a
Right.
mistake, but Homestead couldn't get what they wanted in terms of inside the track and all that other stuff. But one thing I do want to kind of hit before we jump off, and first off, if this is the first time you joined us, make sure you like, this post-race show, subscribe if you want to stick around, where we can turn a 3.5-hour boring race and into an entertaining 50-minute post-race show.
Yeah.
And
Joe,
I do think anybody just listening for the first time, the three of us really like each other, or at least I think we do.
That is not true at all, Steve.
That's
Go
not
ahead,
true.
Ryan.
Okay, go ahead,
Don't go-
Ryan.
We have actually coming out on extra what happens behind the scenes at this. But I kind of want to end it off with this way, Joe. You mentioned that it's not good for NASCAR when William Byron wins a race, or I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. It's not what people want to see, the fans. At 26 years old, William Byron winning races is going to win him over fans. So how else is he supposed to win fans except for maybe one of our shorts by going up and punching somebody in the face?
No. Look, I get what you're saying. And, so I guess my perspective right now is William Johnson could win 7 championships, or William Johnson.
Who the heck is that? Is that a vice president from the 1700s?
William Byron could win 7 championships and 82 races. And people will look at him like Jimmy Johnson. William Byron is not where it's at, man. He's got a terrible personality. He's not funny. Nobody likes to talk to him. He's not going to. Yeah, you can't sell. He's not going to be a sports superstar at the end of the day. In my opinion, he might win over a bunch of fans. I don't see it happening. I could be wrong. Before I die of a heart attack when I'm 55, he might get to that point, but I don't know yet. So let's see. I just don't think he's where it's at, and I don't think fans are going to get real excited about him winning. I don't think they get real excited about Alex Bowman winning. I think that those are the second 2 drivers that Hendrick has because they have 4 cars to fill and they're decent drivers. I don't think those are the 2 supposed to be winning races. Go ahead.
Who does get excited? You, every time Eric Almirola wrecks. And sorry, Doggo, I know he keeps throwing your Bowman guy under the bus. You are the residential by yourself leading the Alex Bowman flag. But
there's an Alex Bowman fan?
There is the Doggo, the one that he was going to buy you an Eric Almirola shirt until you wanted the extra small, and then we had to label our videos explicit. So
well, I'm going to have to meet this guy one day because I want an autograph from the only Alex Bowman fan on the face of the earth.
That's tough. I'm sorry, Zach. That's his words. I'm sorry. So that's been a good post-race show. Do you guys have anything else to add to this in closing?
No. Let's go Atlanta.
Oh gosh. See, I just had something right on the tip of my tongue that was a good way to end it. And now
Strokes
I can't.
are terrible.
Ecstasy.
Yeah, no.
Ritalin.
Go ahead if I can think of it.
They're time released now. They're time released now. So don't do what normal people do with them.
Yeah.
As soon as I start my closing.
Okay. I got it. I go back to a statement I've made so far for the last 2 races now, Las Vegas and here, in that I'm going to really encourage people to don't have a fan that you're gaga nuts over. I have enjoyed the racing itself more since Elliott has been out, because I don't feel tied as much to the 9 car. I was rooting like heck for Harvick today, and I've been rooting for Kyle Busch. And it's actually more fun to not have one driver that you're just like, I got nothing but Chase Elliott t-shirts in my closet. So that's it.
But hey, I do have something to ask you, Ryan, because this is not something we got to, and I thought we would discuss Kyle Busch today. I think the last 2 races, I think they're failing to do something with that car and the setup. What's your take on? Obviously, today he got the loose wheel penalty or the uncontrolled tire penalty, and was able to get himself back up in the top 10. But do you think that now that he's got a win, that they're kind of on cruise control for the rest of the season, or do you think because the last 2 races for him have been kind of disappointing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, he backed into a top 10 today due to a 2-tire pit strategy. So that was good that, Ben Bayshore wasn't there to make sure that was a 20th place win finish, because that's what he would have done. You suck, Ben Bayshore.
Yeah.
No, I just think that, it's a learning process, and each RCR is going to have to learn how Kyle Busch wants to drive his cars. And the last 2 weeks, they have come off the hauler terrible. I mean, like 28th in speed. Austin Dillon was god awful today and somehow found his way into the top 12 or 15. And he was like 2 laps down, like early. So I just think that it's a learning process, and, RCR is not JGR at the end of the day. It's just not. And, I think JGR maybe have a couple guys not performing well. Looking at you, Martin Truex Jr., starting to lose a little bit of hope on you on that side of things, but it is what it is. And for God's sakes, quit speeding on pit road every single week.
That's
Hey,
terrible.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan. I have a little bit of issue, and again, I don't want to extend this show, but with you calling backing into a top 10 finish with a 2-tire strategy, that's not a backing into type thing. I mean, normally a 4-tire strategy in that situation with as many laps, because there was no green, white checkered on this race. It finished under green. They didn't get to a green, white checkered because they started.
AJ Allmendinger wrecked.
Yeah.
Did it become a green, white because of that?
When they first went green.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't realize they threw a green, white checkered, because about that time I was watching red carpet for the Oscars. But I don't think backing into a top 10 because of a 2-tire strategy. I think that's a gamble.
Well,
I think that the Harvick, I think, other than the fact that he didn't have his car set up for a short run, but I think what hurt Harvick was he got boxed in. That's a track where you can run 5-6 wide, and there was just nowhere for Harvick to go.
We lost Ryan apparently, but I will tell you this. We'll go ahead and close out the show since we lost Ryan. I'm not sure what's going on with his internet. We do live in Switzerland County, Indiana, but I will tell you this before we leave, Steve, that if Ryan wants to say Kyle Busch backed into a win, he could say Kyle Busch backed into a win, and I'll tell you why. Much like a fat person, which I am, I'm allowed to say fat. I'm allowed to call people fat because I am fat. Him being a Kyle Busch fan allows him to say that Kyle Busch backed into a win. So,
well, he can say he backed into a win.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it right there.
I think a 2-tire strategy is a broad scope, a brush stroke that applies to every driver. There were most of the, I mean, the 24 car and the 5 car took only 2 tires.
Yeah.
The bulk of the cars only took 2 tires.
It is. Yeah, it is what it is. Hopefully,
it was not a back-end strategy.
Yeah, I'm just hoping Kyle Busch does get back on track here in the next couple of races. Hopefully we get to see him or Larson get a win next week. But having said that, Steve, let's go ahead and close out the show. But before we do, you got any final thoughts to get out of here, or we pretty much discussed everything?
I think I've overextended my welcome.
All right, good deal. Well, if you liked our show, like Ryan said before he lost connection with us, go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel. It's a brand new channel. We try to give you the most up-to-date racing news, which you'll probably hear it on this channel first. So if you like listening to us, give us a like and subscribe so you know whenever we put out new content. Have a great night, Steve. Good show. Have a great night.